Hello everyone. I'm going to pick back up with the cancer story tonight. I think we're at like part 4 now. So, left off, I had the 2 surgeries, told my family I was going to die. I didn't. Had the surgery, we became the escape artists, and then they sent me home for recovery. Got home from the hospital, and before I had gone into the hospital, we'd gone to the library and I checked out this book, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. It was a book I'd always wanted to read. I had never read it, and it's a huge book. It's like 1,300 pages long, and I took it to the hospital, and every time Diana, my wife at the time, came into the hospital, she's like, "Did you start your book? Did you start your book?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "You're never going to read that book." And so when I got home, I read that book out of spite. I was reading that book before I went back to the library. So that's mostly what I did during the recovery time before I went back to work. Let's see. What else was there? The recovery process was difficult because I can't do anything. You know, my abdomen was all tore up. Actually, one thing I didn't mention about the surgery. When I was leaving surgery, when I was getting discharged, they disconnected me from all of the pain meds and everything. And we're getting ready to leave, and I had to have a drain to take all of the excess blood going to where my liver was and had been cut out and drained out into this little it's almost like a stress squeezer ball. And so they took that out at the very end, and they had to do manual stitches for that, not staples like they'd done on the surgical part. They went to get lidocaine, they put lidocaine, I think they gave me a shot and everything. Let me tell you, when they gave me those stitches, I felt everything. And I don't cry. I'm not the type that cries very often, and that is the most painful thing that I've ever been through. And it was like 2 stitches. It was 2 stitches. And my mom was there to take me home. And the nurse was doing the stitches. And I couldn't look at it, you know. I had to be on my side. And I was just trying not to pay attention, so that I didn't know the pain was coming. And my mom is looking at me, and she's like, and they get to the end of the stitches, and then the nurse is like, "I think I need to do one more." and I was already so spent. I was so sore, but I was just like, "Do whatever you gotta do." But that was the worst. So whatever else I say, that was the worst. And that was really bad. But because of all that, I couldn't do anything when I got home. Like, you can't lift more than a gallon of milk. You're not supposed to do stairs. You can't do anything. And I'm a competitive person, and I'm a very stubborn person. And the first time that people tell me that you can't do something, that's what I want to do. And so it was an ordeal at home, because I'm a provider, and it's like, I hate feeling like an invalid. I hate not feeling like I'm contributing, and I couldn't stand being helpless. So I fought that. It was very difficult. And my family had to fight with me. "No, you can't do that. No, you can't do that." But it's probably also got me into this mess, because when I was growing up, my parents were probably like, "No, you can't have dessert until you eat your vegetables." And I hate vegetables, and I love dessert, and that's probably what started my affair with Little Debbie, and now we're here. So that's just a little bit more about me. About 2 weeks after I was home, just before I was going to go back to work, so probably the end of May, Lyle, my pastor friend, my spiritual father from Vermont, came to visit again, and he stayed with us. And he was there for a week or so. And before he was getting ready to go, we were doing a walk, and we stopped somewhere, and we were just talking on the property. Like, we owned 30 acres at the time, and so we got somewhere and we were talking privately, and he told me that my marriage was at the 11th hour, and he may have said like 11:59, right? So it was in danger of falling apart, and I wasn't really aware of that. Maybe partially from being naive, maybe partially because I just had so much else on my plate with what I was going through that I really couldn't focus on anything else, even my marriage, because it took everything that I had to go through this. It took more than I had, right? And maybe I probably hadn't completely died at this point. Like I was saying in the other video that cancer killed me. And I don't know exactly when that happened. So maybe I wasn't to that point yet, but at that point I was already gone. I was empty. And I think I told him that. I was just like, I don't know how to do that right now. I've been fighting for 8 months and I don't have anything left in me to fight. Not that my marriage wasn't important to me, not that I didn't think that it was worth fighting for or wanted to fight for it. I just didn't know where I was going to get the energy to do that. And I didn't know what was wrong even at that point in time. And so we walked back up to the house after this conversation, and Diana was there, and the situation all came out. And I'll just say, when you're married for 18 years, you hurt each other, so I'm not going to point the finger at anybody. If anything, I'm probably more responsible, because I feel like as the head of the household, the man is always more responsible. And so life happens, and we agreed at that point that we were going to try to reconcile. And so the next month or so we spent doing that to the best of my ability, and probably to her ability at the time. And that's how the next month pretty much went. I started back at work. Some stressful stuff was going on at work as soon as I got back. But I met with the surgeon that was going to do the colon surgery and remove the cancer from the lymph node in my pelvis. That was going to be the next surgery. I met with her in the middle of June, and the surgery was scheduled for July 7th. So went to do that, another surgery. They got into the surgery, and there were complications because after the first 2 surgeries, my colon had become attached to the scar tissue in my abdomen. And so they had to cut it off or pry it away from my abdomen. And in the process, they either ripped or accidentally cut a portion of my colon that they didn't intend to remove, but then they had to because of that. And then they removed everything else and felt good about it, but they had removed that extra colon. They ended up removing 25% of my colon, a small portion of my rectum. It was like a foot or something like that. Recovery went well. They came to me while I was still at the hospital recovering, and they're like, the piece of the colon that we removed on accident actually had cancer in it. It shows signs of necrosis, which means it's probably been there all along while you were going through the chemotherapy. But because of its proximity to your abdomen, and it, I think they told me it was actually on the outside of the colon. So unless they had been specifically looking for it, it was very easy to miss on a scan, and so they never detected it. And just another one of those God moments along this whole thing. What are the chances that they accidentally removed that piece of colon that had cancer in it? It's just amazing. So we leave the hospital. They do my CEA, and it's undetectable. So it's they can't detect cancer through my blood work. I'm recovering at home, and that it's kind of difficult. And like I said, we had been trying to reconcile, and then it came up in the first week that I was out of the hospital that there had been a backslide And so we were kind of back to square one. And again, we were deciding that we're gonna try to reconcile and work on it. Got our church involved in Tennessee. We're gonna do counseling, but the whole situation was too much for my mother, and she left. There was a falling out between her and my ex, and so she moved back to Vermont at that point, early to mid-July. And so we were going to start reconciling again. We got the church, we were going to do counseling, and then my ex ended up canceling the counseling in August and never really went through with it. After the surgery, for precautionary reasons, I was left with an ostomy bag, on my abdomen to allow my colon to heal. And so I had that until September. So I was just dealing with that. I had moved into the downstairs parent suite that our house had. Various reasons, I had to deal with changing the ostomy bag, just sleeping, just a lot of things. But so I was doing that. I was living downstairs, and it was something having to order all those supplies and everything for that, and it was an ordeal changing it, and it was not fun. Went back in September. They checked the colon to make sure there were no leaks in it, and then they agreed to reverse the ostomy bag. I went in for the reversal on like September 27th. Had the surgery. It was like an hour, 2-hour thing. It wasn't very long. It could have been outpatient, but they decided they were going to keep me overnight, again for precautionary reasons. And because I knew I was going to be at Vanderbilt and having this procedure done, I called my oncologist and arranged to have my blood work done while I was at the hospital for the surgery. The same day that I was having the surgery, but later, like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And my surgery was supposed to be earlier, but she got hung up and it ended up happening later. I didn't get out on time. And I remember they were I had to take a wheelchair to the room, and I was like, I have to go to the other wing and get my blood work done. I have an appointment, I gotta get my blood work done, I need to go over there. And like, you can't walk over there, you've been on anesthesia, we can't let you do that. I'm like, wheel me over there, I have to get my blood work done. And they refused to do it. And I was livid. And so I had to call them, I had to be like, I can't go today, can I reschedule it for tomorrow? And the labs were like, we can't do that without the approval for your doctor. So I had to try to get in touch with my doctor, and it was late in the afternoon, and I couldn't get her, and I couldn't get it scheduled for the next day. And, but they discharged me the next day, which is September 28th, which was exactly 365 days after I was diagnosed with cancer. And 9 out of 10 doctors told me they would have sent me home to die. And I was leaving the hospital. My last CA said that my cancer was undetectable. I didn't have any strings, I didn't have any bags, I didn't have anything. I was going home scot-free. And I think I danced out of the hospital. Like literally, I did the jig going out of the hospital. I remember I had a work call as I was leaving. I was picking up some prescriptions, and so we were talking about that, and then I was driving home. And so thought that was it. And my next appointment with the doctor was at the end of October, and that was going to be my first scan after the surgeries. Because they told me we can't do a scan right after the surgeries because everything is healing. We don't really know what we're looking at. It's difficult to discern, so we have to wait until things are in pretty good shape. So I went to have my scan done, had my lab work done, and the scans and my CA, my cancer marker, they usually take like 24 hours to get the results. All my other blood work is like within an hour. So I met with the doctor, went over the blood work. She's like, I really think everything's good. This is what life is like after cancer. In 6 months, maybe you get your report out. Every 3 months, we're going to do a scan. Then after a year, maybe it's every 6 months we do a scan, etc., etc. So I called my wife. I told her, and I leave the hospital, and I'm driving home after that appointment, and like I'm literally about to pull into my driveway, and my doctor calls me, and she's like, I got your scan results, and the cancer's back in your liver. and there's like 4 tumors. And I was like, what do we do? And she said, I don't know, I need to talk to the surgeons. And I had to pull into my house and go tell my wife at the time and my kids and my family that I was wrong, it's not all right, and the cancer's back. And I had already told my family over the summer that I can't do it again. If the cancer's back, then it's too aggressive. I can't do the chemo again. I'm done. That's it. I want to just live the rest of my life. So it was a very difficult conversation. And so we went on, and about a week, it took a week for the hospital to call me back. It was the longest week of my life. And I was at work and she called me and she's like, the doctors don't want to do surgery again. They don't think that it's going to help. So basically your only option is to be on chemotherapy for life. And I remember having to tell myself as I hung up the phone, I was like, it's a life sentence, not a death sentence. You know, so I'm on chemotherapy for the rest of my life. And I eventually I go and meet with the doctor, and so I talked to her. I'm like, so how long do I have to live? And this is like October, November of 2018, and she said about 30 months. And like, I'm okay with dying. I'm okay with dying, but what I'm not okay with, what I struggled with so much, is that I lost my dad when I was 12 or 13, and my oldest son was like 13, 14, and I was thinking about how much I remember my dad, and I just kept, that's not enough. It's not enough time for me to be sure that they're gonna know that I love them, for them to remember me, for me to be able to do the things that I didn't have with my father, for me to be able to tell them I'm proud, for me to be able to walk my daughters down the aisle. That wasn't enough. And my youngest child is 6, and I'm thinking, wow, 30 months is nothing. And it was depressing, and I was not in a good place for a while, but I refused to accept that. And so that's just where we want. It's a very lonely time. It's a very difficult time, but we'll pick up from there next time. I know this has already been pretty long, so thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.